All right, folks, short break here. Hope you guys didn't go anywhere because round 19 is slated to start momentarily. The matchup here, a couple players we've seen already, and a matchup we actually saw yesterday in round 14. It's more Conrad Bassett-Bouchard, but this time against Evan Berofsky, Jesse. Again, another kind of clash of styles as Evan remains on top as the only 12-win player. Conrad right behind in third place as one of the top 11-win players. Excited for this game as well.
This is massive for Evan because he can open up a bit of a gap between himself and the trailing peloton. But Evan's spread is quite small, which means that he's actually going to get engulfed by the peloton if he can't win this one. So this is basically deciding whether he's going to be a contender going into the ending or not.
Great point. Yeah, it's a pretty clear pathway for Evan. If he just wins 2 more games, he will be the champion in the Collins division at the Crescent City Cup. If he loses a game, he will slip far lower potentially than just second place on the basis of that spread tiebreaker that you mentioned. So I think the players are seated and ready to begin. I'm really excited for this. We can cut over there, see if we can glean any intel from either player's body language here as they're sitting. Do they look confident? Do they look ready? I guess Conrad's not here yet, but we can at least read from Evan, and he looks completely unchanged from any moment that we've seen him on stream so far, Jesse.
Yeah, he has been here before, as previously mentioned. He won this tournament, I believe, in its last installment prior to the pandemic, and he is a long-time top competitor. So it is a battle of nerves here as much as it is a battle of skill. So Conrad, though he won that last one, it was not an easy road to get there. And there were probably a lot of moments of self-doubt. He went deep into the tank at various points in time. So Let's see how that affects him going into this game.
A grueling game, not such a long break before he has to sit back down on the top board and give it a whirl again. And there is one vowel. I was wondering, are we going to see a vowel for him on this first rack? And he gets just the one. So I think that J and that vowel are likely to come out here very quickly. He plays Judd, which I'm sure feels very standard. I like it, Jesse.
Wasting no time.
Yeah, that's the best thing you can say about that is that it took him 30 seconds exactly to make that move. That's just the right amount that he should have been spending there.
Evan does have an O to make judo, and
true.
Wouldn't surprise me if that is the basis for his next play.
Yeah, judo. Also, he has the O to underlap Judd, too. So he'll have to choose between whether he wants to hook judo or play something underneath. And he has a bunch of letters that underlap that U as well. The P, the H, there's a couple different possibilities there. For example, the judo hooking plays are good, but he could also consider just playing Koha, Koha, underlapping if he so chose.
He can also play poke. I have no idea how to pronounce that word. Poake in judo.
True.
As a pretty high scoring alternative, but it is a good rule of thumb that playing parallel is better on responding to the opening play, just because it gives less back to your opponent, and that is what Evan has chosen to do.
Yeah, he plays Hopak. This is an option I actually hadn't thought of. It seems pretty good to me. It scores 34 points. The play you suggested, Jesse, scores 33 points. Poke, hooking, judo. The difference being for one fewer point, you get to keep the H along with your E as opposed to 2 E's after this play. So maybe... this is a much tighter, more restricted play than poke, which puts an E out into space in a really dangerous way. but it would have been a little more offensively lucrative option to play poke here. It feels pretty stylistic. I wonder if other players would play poke, like maybe Dave Wiegand.
I think given Evan's strengths, I would almost certainly be trying to angle for an open board where I can let my bingo knowledge shine. And the board after Hopak does not feel like that board. But I honestly don't know if Evan thinks that way or not. I don't know if that's a consideration for him.
Yeah, it's that would be sort of adjusting your play would be sort of deference to Conrad, right? In that situation, I would definitely be feeling like maybe I have this opportunity to stylistically make a really open choice here that's going to make life difficult for Conrad if he wants to close the board. So, yeah, either way, this is a very stylistic choice. I'm not going to call Hopak a mistake of any type. And Conrad is going to play Tret here underneath Hopak with he and Jot. I think I like this. He had an option maybe to leave that T off. That's a reasonable choice to make here. What do you think about that, Jesse?
I like it. I think CRST is just a little bit too consonant heavy. And playing off that T just should make it a little more likely that he's able to turn this into a bingo.
Yeah, it's very, CRST, if you're able to draw vowels, is incredibly strong as a 4-tile leave. But if you don't, you regret it more, strongly. Every pick that you get subsequently after that play gives you a chance of getting more vowels. And Evan quickly plays off Phi underneath Tret. So a lot of horizontal plays here, one after the other. I wonder, I definitely expect Conrad to play Chubb or something underneath there. Let me get the scores updated for you guys. So you can see the score currently, Conrad 45, Evan 52. Should update in a moment. But I certainly expect another horizontal play on the row beneath Phi here. That would be 5 in a row.
So I'm seeing from folks watching, should Evan have exchanged? And I think it's pretty marginal. He kept, usually if you have a 20-point play or so, that's probably the point where I think it's worth playing through. That's just from my experience, that's the rough heuristic for when it's worth it to keep going. And by that margin, Evan was probably a little bit short. I think it's also governed a bit by the state of the board, where I'm falling behind play here a little bit, but this is the kind of board where AEII is never going to do much of anything, and having an S for Hopax would be super important. So I actually would have exchanged on that Phi turn, just keep an E, turn over 6 tiles, try to draw a blank or an S, because although he has found a pretty cool way of cleaning things up.
Yeah, this word, a super useful word, i.e. I'm interested, though, that Y on his rack would have been a very heavy score underneath the K on that triple letter score. Potentially more points on offer, but i.e. certainly using up many, many more of those vowels on his rack. I don't know.
I think IE is the move. I like that he did that rather than continuing to soldier on with mishmashes of unpaired vowels, and he's been rewarded for it.
Yeah, he has. He's gotten on to his leave of IO. I think he drew SSZ, which is just a lot of good stuff there. So, on the other hand, Conrad is now going to bingo through this E. I would think. Momentarily, I expect ignorers to go down, very likely through that first E of IE to avoid unnecessarily exposing the triple word scores at the edge of the board. And here it comes. Nicely spotted. First bingo of the game.
Look at the comeback that's immediately going to follow up. He's putting that sandwich between the double letter and the triple word score, and there's only one way this one's going to end.
Yeah, for sure. That Z, very timely for Evan. He's going to pop that in there. He has actually a few picks of plays that he can fit there. It's not clear to me whether he should play Zoea or Zeus, Jesse. Very different choices there, even though both will score 69. Nice.
Interesting.
But yeah, what's your instinct say here as Evan goes for Zoea?
I would need to look at the bag because it depends how vowel or consonant heavy things are. We're pretty early, but I don't actually know if these S's are going to do that much. Although maybe he'll get a good scoring play down from Chubbs. But otherwise, there's actually not too much to do with the S's. So I would have been tempted by Zeus, but I think Zoe is probably right.
I think it's one of these. It's similar to Tret. We were talking about how after Ret versus Tret, you keep either 3 or 4 consonants, whereas after Zeus, you would keep 3 vowels along with an S. So it's the type of rack where if you draw a consonant or two, you're going to bingo a lot of the time. But if you draw a vowel or two, you could regret your choice. So it's a very kind of, I would say the word that comes to my mind is a polarizing choice. When you keep those imbalanced leaves, either very good things come to you or very bad things come to you. Whereas Zoea feels a little smoother in those outcomes, keeping those 2 S's behind for later. So
it's hard to get too excited about IOSS though. So, but
yeah.
AEIS, I do think a classic rookie thing is to just look at the vowels and say, yes, these vowels are good. Lots of words have vowels in them, but AEIS is often a one-way train to just having to play a 10-letter play that gets rid of your vowels. So on the fence.
There's a question in chat from Akaju too. Rookie question: are all TWL words valid in CSW? Is CSW inclusive of TWL? And I definitely feel like the answer is extremely close to yes.
Pretty much, except for some
one or two. Yeah, there's like 1 or 2 lexicographical oddities that make that not precisely true. But I would say in general, the sense of it is, yeah, absolutely. All words in TWL are in the Collins Dictionary as well. It is kind of a subset. As we see a vowel go down, that looks pretty good to me for Conrad. Conrad normally a pretty defensive player, but with the V and W on the rack, he cannot turn down this very obvious way to dump his weaker letters and score quite well in the process.
And now looking at Evan's tiles, I think there's some chance that he does cash one of the S's for Chubbs. Although,
is there even a word that can fit there that goes down without using both S's?
Another option is he can underlap Chubb. So he could play something like Sty and making Rechts, Ut, and By. That's a pretty good scoring play. I don't know if he's going to beat that.
Yeah, I like that. Another option would just be, as the Adam555 says, Doys with K and is off of the KA of Hopak and IE. Seems reasonable, I guess.
That's pretty good.
Just the IST leave feels pretty good, though. That does very little to address, none of these plays do much to address the openings created by a vowel, but those aren't really that scary, I suppose.
You would like to do something about the bottom right, but you don't have to do anything. It's just if 2 plays were equal and one of them gummed up the right, I would take that one.
Yeah, agreed. I just don't really see a great way to accomplish that, as you say. So yeah, there's actually a bunch of plays here that are quite close in my estimation. It'll be interesting to see which way Evan goes here. I think thematically, though, as you alluded to earlier, Jesse, Evan with these two S's on the rack, but there's no real great spot for that S that lets you get a bingo down. The S spots on this board are much more focused on scoring, like with Chubbs going down to that lower triple. So I don't really see how Evan can, none of these candidate moves, I guess maybe Sty. No, not Sty, because REHS cuts that off too. So very few of these candidate moves. Maybe just like Yod or something with BY. Okay, he's going to play Doys. I think I like this play.
No, Yod is quite clever. I don't know if it's worth doing, but what I like about, and to be clear, we're talking about YOD on row 13, making buy. And that would have set up a bingo lane for the S's. So the S's would have become much more powerful. I think that might have been, it's hard to say, is it worth spending 6 points to create a bingo lane? I might have done it myself, actually, because I don't know how else Evan is going to take the advantage. Although just to say that, the Q.
Wow, the Q. Yeah, the fly in the ointment with the Q. Yeah, it's tricky. I don't really know. I would probably go ahead and play Doys here as well, just because the score is so even. I don't feel that much urgency to create new space for myself right now. Maybe it's okay to just be a little patient and wait for a better opportunity. And I was wondering if we would see Conrad play Vrot through the O of a vow, but Conrad's opting to exchange instead. I feel a little surprised by that. I was expecting Vrot to be played there.
Well, it's interesting because I feel that both players are playing as if the S's are quite valuable, but again, there's just not really that many places this S is going to go on the current board. Not to over-index on the current state of things, but I don't actually know. I would be pretty surprised if Conrad drew a bingo after this exchange, and if he's not going to bingo, then I'm not sure what the purpose of the exchange was. Although,
he's drawing very well. Look at that.
Me wrong.
Yeah, Senorita at the very least to the A of Zoya. So this is going to work great. Well, at the same time, now Evan making a clever play. He plays cheese and ticks, holding another I. So this is a smart idea by Evan, setting himself up to re-overlap that Q. And I don't think Conrad will have much of a choice here, but to play his bingo, and then Evan will get his Q overlap. So it's going to be pretty close after the flurry of moves we're about to see is done.
Selfishly, it's fun that things are going to end up roughly in an even ballpark here.
Yeah, and not only is it going to be relatively even on the scoreboard, Conrad will play Senorita, but Evan will in all likelihood play Wit and Chi and It in the lower left corner, and in so doing, he's going to retain an N to potentially re-overlap with Chin. And not only that, there's now an S in the top right corner of the board, which it feels almost certain that at some point, maybe the E, N, O will be obstructed by a parallel play. But if that S sits open for any length of time, the odds are good that at some point one of the two players will bingo there.
It's all up for grabs right now. This is going to be fun. Whoa, he did not decide to take Wit.
Wow, Wintle. That's interesting. I don't think Wintle is bad or wrong. I just would have thought that he was very likely to re-overlap with that I down there. So still a really good score for this play, 34 points to Wit's 36. So it's not that bad of a drop on the scoreboard, but I'm surprised by that, Jesse.
I think that I would need to see the state of the towel bag, but I think Evan was probably scared of giving cheap points back after Wit, because Conrad could have had an N and scored very easily. My goodness, what happened here?
The suggestion is that Evan wants to get a blank, which of course we now can see from Conrad's rack was never an option. So who sees that there is one triple here through the W at the base of the board? There it is. One, it has been suggested, JL84.
My goodness.
So this would be one extremely impressive find. It's the only one there. Gromwell, I feel like he's got a good chance to see it somehow. Oh, man. Yeah, you see, he's isolated, as you guys in the chat says. He's isolated worm. He's thinking about, can I find a compound word ending in worm? I'm almost positive that's what Conrad's doing here.
Yes. He needs to not burn too much time. Although actually he's doing a pretty good job with his time. So he can give himself a nice think here, or the benefit of a nice think. And we get a little bit of a pause because the action's actually been pretty frenetic to this point. So it's
both players are doing,
reflect.
Compared to a couple of the previous games, both players are doing pretty well on the clock. So little time for Conrad to think. Hopefully he looks over. Now he's in his classic pose. This is a pose we've seen many times where he looks just in complete agony with his hands on his head, but he's just focusing, really. And to that point, if he uses a lot of time here, but that ends up in him finding the triple, it will be time well spent.
149 points would be massive, like order of magnitude higher.
Pretty
closer
close
to winning. So. Yeah,
pretty close to game ending there. So this is tough. Let's not beat around the bush here. This is a very, very difficult find. There's only one triple through that W. It is an extremely obscure word that with one blank, it's hard enough to find a word like this. With two, it just introduces an unbelievable amount of complexity and difficulty. So let's not be too upset if Conrad ends up, playing something like moulage on the top of the board, overlapping the W, I, and N of Wintle. That's going to be a pretty good move for him as well.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to index on these bingo maximization exercises and then to gloat when these so-called experts aren't finding the things that this 200-person Twitch chat just, hive-minded their way to. But
yes,
that's not going to be the thing that decides whether Conrad's going to end up the champion of this tournament or not. It's more so the cumulatively. I mean, it is important to this game, but it's more important that Conrad gives a good think, but doesn't fixate too much on whether he missed something.
He seems to still be honed in on that worm possibility, which is completely sensible. There are a lot of these compound words ending in that. A couple of you guys suggested glowworm in the chat. Unfortunately, Conrad has an E, but if that E was any of another O, an R, or whatever, he would be, or I guess another L, he would be doing well. But let's see what he comes up with. Now he's shuffling.
I want to go back a little bit to that Wintle decision, because I think that was an error, and one that I think Evan is going to regret quite a bit. And I say that I've literally just called out not trash talking the players, but I think ELNT in trying to bingo to that S would have gone better than what he has right now. He introduced a lot of randomness by flipping over 5 tiles. And though the blanks are out there, I think he might end up regretting Wintle as a bit of a loose play.
He plays moulage after all. Good thoughts about Wintle. I was definitely expecting the lower play, but obviously with Conrad drawing 2 blanks anyway, it's easy to look back and judge. I think there's a very coherent argument for Wintle Moulage in that spot, I had suggested it 2 spaces over, but it actually scores 1 more point with this positioning for Conrad because the M on the double letter score combining with the triple word score. So sad not to see Gromwell, but that being said, Conrad still finds his best remaining option and is in pretty firm command in this game. He's going to have the score update. There it is, 341 to 235 for Evan. I feel like Evan still has some chances, though, Jesse, just because the board has, a bunch of interesting opportunities here. I wouldn't say they're great chances, though.
Yeah, I think an interesting chance here, I'm curious what you think, is to play cat down from the Q. Or cat, or I wonder how you pronounce the Q in cat. Is it like more of a guttural kind of chat? I haven't really known that, but I think that's a sneaky road to maybe lucking into a triple, or he could draw something like a tile late afterwards, and it slows the game down, only plays a couple tiles, scores decently. I'd like him to give that a go.
Yeah, it's going to motivate Conrad to play nav U to the W of a vow, almost certainly, and block both of those triple lane potentials in one go. That's what I would strongly expect to happen after cat. But I absolutely love the idea, if only because not only does it positionally create some threats for Evan, it also precisely undoubles his 2 A's and 2 T's, and maybe he'll get a 7-letter bingo at the top of the board after forcing Conrad to address the bottom. Instead, he plays a Wito. Very intriguing choice. Why not a Watto in the same spot?
I think in the games today, we've consistently seen that Evan's lead heuristics are different from the way we're thinking about it. It's clearly working for him, but he's like notably valuing different tile combos, or maybe emphasizing it less. So
something like that. Yeah, true. I mean, I'm looking just at the situation with the A's and E's in the bag. I don't see a real reason for that, as Conrad immediately plays Vamp. This is a pretty nice way to obstruct that row 3 bingo line underneath Wintle. This is going to make it way tougher to fit anything under there. So I like this for Conrad for sure. Another notable play on that turn was Vene underneath Wintle, making U, In, Na, and TE for a pretty nice score.
And that would have been similarly defensive as well. But yeah, I mean, after a Weto, you look at that versus Cat, and I think you have to say that Evan doesn't have a lot going on the board now, which is exactly what Conrad was hoping to accomplish, and can't help but think that Cat would have given him a few more threats.
Yeah, for sure. Now for Evan, I just wonder if it's time to get a little crazy. There's no S's or blanks remaining, but there are several N's, and I wonder if you just want to play Xi and Chi here, Xi and Chi, and just score a bunch of points and try to pick something with an N. I don't know. I mean, the score is so desperate for him that maybe I would feel obligated to do something like that just to be a little crazy. But maybe now is not the time for a play like that.
How many eyes are left? Because since we're just uttering wild ideas at this point, another one, actually that's such a bad idea that I really hesitate to mention it for fear of hurting my reputation. But I was going to say something like he could actually just drop the X at max and try to make a maxi / some kind of other bingo across.
Oh, interesting.
But then Conrad's going to immediately play down from the V. So that was can only be described as a bad idea. But that's the flavor of the kind of thing he's going to have to do to get back into this one.
Yeah, good comments too. That if in this particular scenario, if Evan wants to get really nuts and play XI in the lower corner, and it looks like he's going to play lid, which feels a fair bit safer. But had XI been the play there, Conrad would have responded with unrobe for a very, very huge score. So dodging that scenario for Evan, but he's still in a little bit of trouble here. I guess he needs some kind of big play with the X somewhere and then a pretty big bingo. And it's hard to really see where he's going to achieve that, especially because Conrad will just play one or oneer underneath lid now.
Yeah, the other thing is a small thought is Evan's tournament situation where he has, if I'm not mistaken, a negative spread. So his spread means nothing to him at this point, right? He should be trying. He should be going wild. Like he can try almost anything he wants. His spread is not going to win him any tiebreakers anyway. So he should, in my opinion, be trying some pretty experimental moves here. Evan does not have a negative spread. Thank you. Evan had a smaller spread. Well,
yeah,
he should try crazy stuff. I selfishly want him to do crazy things right now on stream with the world watching. I understand why he's not doing that. I'm just letting my personal biases reveal themselves.
Yeah, if he's really going for the win of this whole event, I do feel like he has to go for this win here, right? Like if he's going for winner go home, which maybe he's not, right? It's definitely defensible to go for the highest finish that's reasonable given what you're drawing. But if you're going for like a title, you want to be the Crescent City champion this year, you got to do something crazy. Nice play of Annex to score pretty well, though 35 points, as nice as that is for that play, still has him down pretty significantly in the scoreboard. So, all right, at this point, let me update the tracking. So for Conrad, he has audible, unplayable on his rack, appropriate with the NFL weekend ongoing here. 3 tiles in the bag. All Conrad has to do is either score a lot of points or use 2 tiles here, I think. And he's going to be just fine. Couple places seem reasonable. I don't know if this is a scenario where Conrad wants to try to maximize his score. Maybe he'll try to fish something and try to get another bingo because he is trailing Rob Rubinski and only Rob Rubinski in the spread department. So maybe he wants to try to notch as big of a win as possible, as opposed to just defend here.
I totally agree. I wouldn't be surprised if we get to spend another few minutes here with Conrad as he thinks through how to accomplish that. Because it could actually make a pretty big difference on the tournament outcome. So what do you think he's going to do?
I am kind of liking just playing DIXI here and maybe drawing into a bingo ending in able or something like that. It scores reasonably well here for him. I'm not worried about Evan's bingo responses. They just won't score enough. And I like my ABLE combination. I don't like the U that goes with it. But maybe that's a reasonable choice to create a nice 7s lane ending in a vowel. Maybe you hit a few things from time to time there. That being said,
if he did do that, Evan could also bingo there, and the pool actually looks quite good from Conrad's perspective. So that is the double-edged sword of it.
True. So in your quest to win by even more, you could sacrifice the pretty solid win that you have here. Maybe that's not warranted, and in which case I'm not sure where I would go. I guess you could just play Obi in the lower right on top of Owito. scores okay, doesn't use anything or doesn't use up 3 tiles. I guess if you're trying to make sure that Evan doesn't bingo to cut a big chunk of the spread off, I guess you really do want to block the E of NX, right? What else is really out there that scares you here in terms of a bingo threat?
Not much.
So if that's true, what's the idea?
How about if he fishes an O, he could have unilobed through the O at the bottom of the board. That could have been a try. It seems like that's not what he's going to do. It's only a 1 out of 10, so it's probably not worth it. But if he had found somewhere for the A, then he could have gone for unilobed for a jillion points.
This is interesting, though, because I think actually this play by Conrad has addressed the threat that I just mentioned, right? So playing Da and Oma and Mad does pretty effectively block that E of NX without opening anything else up. Oma only would take an S hook, no S's left. So if Evan had an 8-letter word ending in E, this would block it. So I think this is a pretty savvy play by Conrad, who's clearly taking that approach of rather than going for another bingo of his own, let's just prevent any shenanigans from Evan, get out of here with a solid win.
Yes, that was definitely the safest way he could have played that, and completely understandable.
So tracking is correct now for Evan. It doesn't look like he has terribly much to worry about from Conrad's end, although we were just saying that if you're Evan, you got to try to somehow win this game. So the only way you can really do that is to play 1 tile, hope you draw a bingo somewhere or other, maybe through that through the O of a vow, which he is he's basically just giving up and saying, it ain't happening for me this game. I'll play my best give up play of tofu and move on.
Which thrown in the towel.
Yeah, towel's thrown in. I think it's reasonable. I'm not really sure what option on his part had any chance of working there.
And that probably marks the end of, well, I shouldn't prematurely write him off, but I'm not sure if he can win the tournament from this point, actually.
Yeah, it was a good comment from G.I. Joel in the chat, who it's great to see Joel hanging out. Nice to see you, Joel. Joel says, based on spreads with so many players just 1 game behind, Evan cannot win tourney if he does not win this game because losing now drops him out of the top 2 places. He will not get a chance to be paired with someone that allows him to win the tournament in the last round. So that's very, if you're trying to make heads or tails of that statement, basically what it means is going into the last round, there's going to be players with 12 wins that aren't Evan who have better spread than Evan has. And those players will get a chance to square off. And by definition, one of them must win and will very likely remain far ahead of Evan in spread. So basically his tiebreaker is too low to warrant giving him a chance to win the tournament in the final round.
Notice before we fixate too much on the standings that Conrad's play of Bile I'm actually not sure what else he could have done, but it does have the nice property of setting up a spot for his 3 remaining letters. He can play.
Oh, very nice.
You can play Lieu, Lieu, or Liu, or however on earth you're supposed to pronounce a French word in English. And that's kind of a mark of expert endgame play, as we discussed a little bit at the end of last game, where you're trying to come up with a sequence that lets you get rid of all your letters first. And he has managed to do that here.
Yeah, nicely spotted. That's definitely makes a lot of sense. So it's going to be up to Evan to try to figure out how is he going to block it. He definitely has ways of doing so, but will he be, in Evan's shoes? It looks like he's completely focused and unperturbed by the way this game has gone. But, he could be forgiven in not playing this endgame as, expertly as he might if it actually mattered to his chances of winning the tournament. So maybe he will just autopilot this and let Conrad play Lou on his next turn. So good move for sure by Conrad. We'll see how Evan responds.
Oh, I love this comment from Jello Mocha. Someone is paying attention. So Evan could play Crab immediately, which is a fairly strong play, but he can alternatively play ing, ing first, keeping the letters for crab, and block Liu, Lieu. So you could play ing for 8 points at b4. This is one of these classic endgame patterns that you learn from analyzing endgames. A lot of times you play your defensive play first. And look at that. That's exactly what he's done, and he's making crab worth more points by making crab an ag.
Yeah, good thought here. I think ing is still likely to be slightly better. But this is absolutely the right idea by Evan Berofsky here. I think Conrad can just quickly, if he so chooses, respond to this. I think Jello Mocha's even said you just plop your I down underneath the B to block crab and force Evan to play something else, which I guess would be Arc under Chubb. So these end games get really complicated. For those following along that are not tournament Scrabble players, it's worth really emphasizing that the way you generate moves and sequences in the end game of a Scrabble game actually very closely resembles chess. It becomes a perfect information game where you know exactly the letters your opponent has if your bookkeeping has been accurate all game, and Conrad makes the right play. Really like that from him here. That's
absolutely
just impressive, impressive stuff.
He knew what Evan was up to there, but it's it's easy to overlook this stuff because it's only a few points. It's not the bingos, but I find the logic of these is pretty fascinating.
Yeah, it's just a totally different way of playing as it is in the early going when the game is one of incomplete, very much incomplete information. There's very little that you can ascertain about what your opponents have in the early game. That's not always true. Sometimes your opponent will make a play where you quickly understand if they use an S in the early going, they probably have another one, for example. But in any case, Conrad with a huge win for him here, pulling Evan back to the pack. Evan was the only player at 12 wins going into round 19, and now there's going to be a boatload of players at 12, I assume. Let's just see some of the other results. Conrad moving up to 12 to join Evan. Other players, Rob Rabinski, is his game complete? No, this is one of the first games to finish in round 19. Dave Wiegand with a huge win over Austin Shin, so that's going to set Austin back. He'll stay at 11 as Dave Wiegand moves to 11.5. So Dave winning a bunch of games in a row. He's not in contention to win, but certainly in contention for a prize. But still a lot of results to come in here, Jesse. I have no idea how to handicap the next round just yet with all the results that we need to sort of compile.
Oh, yeah, this is going to be awesome. Anything can happen. I think it's going to be one of those scenarios where we're going to watch one game and the winner probably wins, but then if a dark horse candidate wins by 200, then they could win themselves. It's going to be fascinating.
Look at the message on the board there. CBB didn't know Cromwell. So if you don't know it, you can't find it. He made the best play otherwise. So message for us there. Thank you, Conrad, for that little bit of insight. If you don't know the word, it's going to be hard to come up with it in the game, of course.
A little fan service from Conrad there. I hope that word doesn't mean terrible things that I don't realize, but yeah.
I don't think so. Quick update in the NWL division. If Josh Sokol is able to defeat Dean Saldana in round 19, he is going to be effectively Gibsonized as the champion of that division. We definitely will not have a Gibson in the Collins division, so we're going to stay here for sure in round 20, but we'll definitely give as many updates as we can about what's going on in that other division. So the dry erase messaging system is nice. good points there in the chat. So I think that the delay heading into round 20 might be slightly longer because we really do need all the results from round 19 to come in before the pairings can be made for round 20. So maybe we'll, I don't know, we could. I don't know. I think it's okay to, it would be nice to keep all 170 of you guys entertained a little bit before we get to round 20, as opposed to cutting to a break.
Well, why don't you give us your stand-up routine that you've been working on lately?
Oh my God. I'm more of I'm not much for observational comedy. I'm more of I don't know, performance-based comedy. So I don't know if that's going to translate too well to Twitch, but thank you for that prompt. Hopefully you guys are enjoying our witticisms here.
We try.
But the question, what was Conrad's message? He did not know Gromwell, the triple that he had available when he played Moulage. I don't know. I mean, maybe if I cut to I can share my Quackle screen if we want to go over some of the game while we wait.
Expert analysis.
So I could do that, I suppose. Not sure. Is that something that makes sense to do? So I think our producer might be able to let us take a deeper look at some of the nuances of that last game. Nice. Okay. So rather than take a break, let's just take a
I am good at charades. Thank you very much.
Okay. So, we'll get that audio up. Thanks, guys. We know it cut out there. So we can cut back and just take a look at some of the interesting moves in this past game in just a minute. Again, thank you, everybody, so much. We have a nice big audience watching Scrabble on Twitch. Love to see that. Definitely hoping that, as our audience sizes grow, there is this effect on Twitch that I've heard, Jesse, that like the first 1,000 viewers are the hardest to get. And then the algorithms start to kick in and make it much easier to get that next 1,000. So I feel like it would be a cool milestone to have a Scrabble broadcast with 1,000 viewers. That's kind of my personal goal.
Yeah, I think they call that the Mandela effect, if I'm not mistaken.
Man, I've heard that, but I actually don't
There's not
Are you
just
busting my chops there?
outright lying
Oh.
because I can. Yeah.
I've heard that word, but I didn't think that's what it was. But
A story of
I
commentary
trust you.
betrayal, I'm afraid.
Oh no!
Just
Wow.
leading you into the dark forest, like Conrad led
Yeah,
Evan earlier,
that's
or
right.
Rob. But yes.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, if we can get to that barrier, that's going to be a big milestone. So yeah. Well, our producer will let us know if it's just not in the cards to get the audio working for the analysis board, and if that's true, we can just cut to a break and figure out what the heck's going on in the standings. Again, it's a complete logjam up there. We are going to have to wait for some of those other results. It seems like it looks like a result or two have come in. Rob Rabinski with a pretty big win over Chris Lipe. So he is going to be another 12-win player, joining Conrad and Evan. It seems like with Austin Shin's loss, it feels like that means we're going to be watching Conrad and Rob Rabinski square off in the finals. Pretty sure. Don't want to get ahead of myself there, Jesse, but not sure if you're looking at the standings and sanity checking that assertion on my part.
Oh no, I don't bother looking at such things. I just kind of let you do it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely in the school of just tell me who to play and I'll sit down and play. And I try not to think too much about the implications either. So, all right, let's see if we can try this, the analysis board. If we cut there, we can get a little extra conversation. Let's see. Can you guys let us know in the chat if you can hear us here? Who can still hear me on the analysis board? I'm watching. Oh, all right. Beautiful.
Oh, good.
Thanks,
my arms
everybody.
were getting sore from trying to pantomime the plays. Yes.
Nice.
It's good.
Yeah, so this was a really interesting game. The first move that generated some debate on our part was just the idea of Conrad opening with Judd, and Evan has an O to potentially hook. Poke versus Hopak or Koha. These are very interesting options here. Poke scores just as well as those others. It leaves EH, which is a really nice two-tile combination for scoring, especially setting up a place to play parallel. But this E out in space, Jesse, after a play of Judd, that gives me pause.
Oh, I agree. And a lot of very cheap plays can go at K9 to K11. So I suspect that something more defensive is called for. Yeah, we have our little Monte Carlo simulation tool. It's called Quackle. It's a community much beloved tool. And the top play here of Koha is actually what top expert David Eldar suggested in chat earlier. So David, if you're out there, you get one raffle ticket. The raffle will be held at 4 a.m. Australian time. So I don't know if you're going to be able to attend, but good job.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's still with us here, though. I don't want to give him too much credit because I'm pretty sure that he himself is simming along with the game as we're playing, because he's giving us updates on like, oh, this play sims best, this play sims best. However, that being said, I absolutely trust his instincts even before he's doing that. So he had called out Koha probably before he even simmed it. So kudos to David on that for sure.
Not to belabor this play, but against Conrad, a defensive-minded player, I would play Poke because Koha leads to a defensive game afterwards. So it's basically a pick your poison moment.
For sure. There is a stylistic component there where I kind of agree. I would want to keep that as open as possible. But then moving on to Conrad, he plays Tret. You can see that these nice, these 4 consonant leaves, CRST, that you would be keeping here, very, very much a matter of preference of, are you willing to incur that risk of having a rack of all consonants? Also, playing Tret eliminates the ability for Evan to hook his own T or F or whatever else, probably just A. Those, or A. Yeah, for sure. So I think these are pretty close. looks like the simulation is pretty strongly preferring Conrad's choice here.
That makes sense to me. One thing, this is going to get a little bit arcane, but for people who have used these simulation engines like Quackle, a lot of times these leaves are calculated over billions of games. So this is just kind of the average value of CRST, but it depends on what board you're looking at. There's no vowels on this board to play through, so something like CRST is actually a lot worse than it would be just on an average turn. So
Yeah,
that's why our
point.
engine is preferring CRS here, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. It really is so heavily dependent on you drawing those vowels from the bag, as opposed to, you know, there's definitely 8-letter words with this leave that have only 2 vowels, like critters or something like that, where if you had an open E or I on the board, you would only need that 1 vowel out of your 3 picks from the bag to put a bingo together. Whereas without those open vowels, as Jesse said, you're so reliant on actually pulling the vowels from the bag. So then, Jesse, you had said that your sort of internal metric for when would you play something with a really, really bad leave, when would you do that, was roughly 20 points. This play scoring 18 points, just on the edge of what would motivate you to actually put a word on the board here with all these vowels and only the 1 consonant?
Yeah, I tried to explain my logic earlier, although I don't know if it made a ton of sense, but I would exchange here because the outcome here, I think, is often going to depend on who can bingo hooking Hopax first, and keeping A, E, E, I after playing FIE just isn't really going to do a lot. Those vowels are only going to clean themselves up if you draw a ton of consonants, and even then you're not that likely to bingo. So I would reset. There's also not a lot going on. Another time you don't want to exchange is if there's a big hotspot on the board, in which case it's probably better just to cover the hotspot so your opponent doesn't get there, even if it leaves you with total junk. But this board is pretty anemic as is. This is a nice opportunity to reset, exchange those letters, and try to get an S or a blank, in my opinion.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense, Jesse. The S is so valuable here. I mentioned it yesterday once or twice with situations where players had the option of keeping really good bingo tiles together on boards that just don't support bingoing in that way, where really the order of operations is, let's get my hands on an S first, and then I'll worry about keeping those nice bingo leaves, because the words I draw after having that S in hand will actually fit on the board. Whereas in this case, without that S, you are going to struggle mightily to actually bingo here. So definitely agreeing with your analysis there. Chubb, definitely uncontroversially the right play in response. IE was another one where you liked it. I liked it too, but it's definitely worth noting that this spot right here under the K would have been extremely lucrative for that Y, a lot more points on offer. But I do agree that IE feels like a better idea here to me, just to try to get further away from that vowel overload.
Well, it is 15 points. So the question is, these are pretty hard to evaluate. At what point is it worth uncluttering? Because AIIO, there's a fair chance you're going to end up having to exchange at some point down the road. I think. Well, we have the benefit of being able to look at the results, but I think IE was very reasonable here, and it worked out really well for Evan in the game, actually.
Yeah, I agree. My instinct here, the issue with I as well, is not just you. Yes, you get the extra 15 points, but you keep 4 vowels, and you make it so easy for Conrad if he has any kind of 7-letter bingo without an S in it, right? Like, let's imagine for a second that Conrad doesn't have an S. He can now play almost any of his bingos ending in an R, a D, an N. There's just a lot of stuff that's going to fit after this play that won't necessarily otherwise, at least 7-letter plays. Of course, IE putting the E out into space is actually what we saw occur here. And that is a great sort of use case of like sometimes the E's out in space turn your opponent's weak rack into a bingo. Although I wouldn't say this was a weak rack, but it definitely gave Conrad a bingo he didn't already have here, Jesse.
Yeah, absolutely. After a point, it's funny that we think through all the permutations of what could happen, but only one actual event can manifest itself. In this case, having that E in space was the key thing. But in another game, playing I and then having the hooks to EYE, that could have been the key thing, right? So I think it's really easy to over-index on exactly what happened.
Absolutely.
And it's hard to do, but you have to sort of think about the average of all the things that could have happened. And I think IE and I are being pretty level is a fair outcome.
Yeah, agreed. I do agree with that. I also agree with your general assertion that it's so easy to read too much into the exact outcome in the game. When literally, when I click this button to simulate any position here, you can see here, this little number of iterations, right? Each of each individual iteration is its own potential outcome, right? So what happened in your game is just one. And the computer engine is trying to figure out, if you just let it go, it's going to figure out hundreds, thousands of those. And that can often trump your intuition. But of course, there are other ways that the computer simulation can get stuff wrong that a human being might get right. So it is, in general, I definitely view the computer's suggestions as always at least worth consideration. And if you want to then reject them for some reason, that's up to you to do. But it's almost always a good idea to at least figure out what the computer says and then decide whether you accept it or not. So
one last interesting comment from the chat. What about the merits of IE under Chud? And that would have been 2 points less. That's one of those times where you can get stuck hyper optimizing. So you're thinking IE leaves the E in space. Aha, I'm going to put it over here. I'm going to hide the E's. But this gives back just as much stuff, right? You look at, there's a triple letter score next to the E at 14J. There's a bingo lane on row 14. So I actually don't think you've improved anything relative to taking the points. But I've definitely noticed that pattern over the boards. Sometimes it's really easy to fixate on, oh yeah, if I put if I flip the letters or if I put them over here, it's 1 point more, 1 point less.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can spend so much time micro optimizing that you kind of just got to pick one and get on with life. So.
Oh, seeing some transition.
I've been replaced by the flag.
Yeah, I think we're still good.
I think that was like the shark music or the Jaws theme from the Academy Awards. It's like you've gotten way too deep down the analysis rabbit hole, guys. Y'all gotta.
Yeah, cooling us off, right? That flag animation is sort of like waving the cool air as we're we're blowing a lot of wind out there into the atmosphere right now. So gotta cool us off. Another interesting choice, kind of the flip side of the Trent move, was the Zoya versus Zeus move.
Oh yeah, this is perfect for a computer because I have no idea.
It is. Yeah, this is one where I would really trust the computer a lot for a couple reasons. The first reason is that this is from Evan's perspective here. One thing is that Conrad just bingoed on his previous turn, so the rack that he has is actually random. So Quackle always assumes that the opponent's rack is random unless you tell it not to. In this case, Conrad just drew 7 tiles out of the bag. You can't know anything about what he picked. So that is going to be as accurate as it ever will be. And then it's just a matter of, what do you like going forward here between these two plays? And it seems like they're pretty much neck and neck, at least, was the assertion in the chat.
I think we should be announcing these kind of like a horse race. Hey, Zeus is strong off the block, and Zoe is catching up. Oh, you can't see Okay, I haven't watched so many horse races.
Yeah. Yeah, we need some kind of visualization of these two plays kind of like chugging along in their performance in the sim here.
Oh,
And
whoever
look at that. They're flip-flopping. That's what you love to see. It's not even decided yet.
There's got to be some coders out there. Someone put just some kind of a front end layer on top of this where the plays simulate, and they're kind of bars that with horses and jockeys, and they kind of switch places. I would pay someone money for this. Not a lot of money, but some money.
Some. Yeah, I don't think the market for that particular service is so strong. I would probably pay a little bit as well, but beyond the two of us and a handful of other Scrabble players, I don't know if that's the winning business model. But maybe there's a way to make it happen. So it seems like these two plays are very, very close to neck and neck with, I don't know, maybe the slightest edge towards Evan's actual play of Zoya here. So either way, it just goes to show that even though these two plays are really, really close in the computer's estimation, they lead to very different outcomes going forward, right? So the idea there is just that placing an S in this spot in the triple lane leads to these very big potential bingos down to the S being the most frequent ending tile in 8-letter words and 7-letter words and all words. So, anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm actually getting word here that our players are seated and ready to play round 20 for all the marbles here. So maybe we'll cut to the board as soon as we can. Hope you guys enjoyed that as opposed to our break. Jesse, I'm pretty amped for this final game. It's all come down to this.
Can't wait. Cannot wait. This is going to be a great encounter, whoever this ends up being. And they're feeling it. That last round, sometimes it's easy to just sit there and realize that the weight of the world is on your shoulders. But we got some pretty seasoned professionals also who have been here many times over. So I can't wait to even see who they're putting in front of us. And we could have some real dark horses here. I don't know what happened in Eric Smith's last game, but we could even have some new champions because Conrad has never won this tournament, to the best of my knowledge.
Oh, wow. That seems overdue. Or also, he's been on the organizing team at times as I'm trying to get our analysis reset. I think it will be shortly here.